Hi everyone, this is Dr. Jenkins. Welcome to our first lecture chapter of the course. So obviously less than ideal, would be much better to be in person, but alas, here we are. So welcome, and we're going to get through this together. The first chapter is really focused on some basic definitions, but we're going to spend most of our time talking about the scientific method. And here you can see Inspector Gadget, which I'm definitely aging myself here. Okay, here's our outline. Like I said, we'll do some definitions, but we're going to spend most of our time talking about the scientific method. And you can see I'll provide some cartoons just to keep things light sometimes. Except for test day. That's a serious day. All right, now what you're going to see is, let me pick a color, let's pick red. As we go through the material in every chapter, I will be circling, underlining, putting a star beside the most important information. One thing that I want you to be able to do is to be able to know what you should focus on. I don't want you to be wasting time wondering, well, what should I study? I want you to be able to put all your time towards studying what you need to know. So for example, in this slide, I'd like you to look at the definition for sports nutrition and the definition for nutrient. So when I star something, circle it, etc., you know it's important. So that means you should know it for the test. All right, so make sure you read about the definition of sports nutrition. It's really about how nutrients affect the body as it relates to physical activity. So if I was going to put this in my own words, I would say sports nutrition is the study of how nutrients affect the body as it relates to physical activity. And because we use the word nutrient, let's define nutrient. A nutrient is some type of chemical compound that we ingest or that our body makes, and it has a certain function in the body. So nutrients are these things that we either eat or our body makes for us. And these things that we eat or our body makes for us, these chemical compounds, have a certain function in the body. A lot of nutrients, like carbohydrates, like dietary fats, those are things that we eat from food, and they are used for energy. Then we have protein. That's a chemical compound. Sometimes we get protein through food. Other times our body can make protein for us. And protein has a little bit of a different function in the body, gives structure to muscles, etc. Okay, good. The beauty of this video is you can stop it, pause, take your notes, you can rewind, but I want you to focus on what I am focusing on. Okay, you should know that there are 6 nutrients that we're going to be talking about. 6. And they're divided into 2 categories. They're either macronutrients, and you can see I'm writing on all of these, so you should know all of these. Macronutrients and micronutrients. There are 4 that are considered macronutrients and 2 groupings that are considered, micronutrients. You might think, looking at that word, because I know that you're good students and you're breaking down the word already, and macro means big. So you might automatically think that a macronutrient just means that the nutrient itself, the chemical compound itself, is bigger. But that actually isn't the case. What macronutrients mean, so these 4, carbohydrates, fats, protein, and water, you should know those. These are considered macronutrients because we need them in higher amounts. So it's not that they're actually bigger in structure necessarily. Instead, it's considered a macronutrient because we need a lot of it. If you look at these examples, it shouldn't be that surprising. We need a lot of carbohydrates, energy. We need a lot of protein. We got a lot of muscles to give structure to. We need a lot of water. Our body's about 60% water. So these are considered macronutrients because we need them in higher amounts. Versus vitamins and minerals, which are considered our micronutrients because we need them in smaller amounts. It doesn't mean that the micronutrients are any less important. So it's not that the micronutrients are less important. We just need less of them for them to get the job done. So all 6 nutrients are really important. We need all of them. We just happen to need the macronutrients more in larger amounts, the micronutrients in lesser amounts, but they're all important. Nice and straightforward. Okay. Now I'm getting excited. I wish you could see me. My arms are wildly gesticulating because I'm excited about science. You may not be excited about science, but oh boy, I am. So this field of sports nutrition, how on earth do we know what we're talking about? How do we know that we need a lot of carbs? How do we know that protein helps give structure to muscle? Through science, period. And that's what this course is about, giving you the science. And how did we figure those out? Through something called the scientific method, which is what this chapter is all about. But first, let me make it applicable. Let me ask you a question. So let's say I give you a list of 20 commonly used ergogenic aids. An ergogenic aid is something that is said to aid athletic performance. So it could be steroids, growth hormone, EPO, caffeine, amphetamines. Whole list, right? So what if I say that out of 20 commonly used ergogenic aids, how many of those do you think have been proven to be effective through scientific research? And of course, scientific research uses a scientific method. I don't mean that your buddy at the gym said it worked. I mean that there was a scientific study. Some people got the growth hormone, some people didn't. We had them do the same thing and we compare the results. So how many out of 20? Imagine the Jeopardy music playing in the background. I'll tell you how many. 25%. You do not need to know these right now for this course. I am simply making a point. So you don't need to know them right now, word for word, but I am making a point. I've listed 20 commonly used ergogenic aids, and they might look familiar to you, some of them. But only 25%, only 5 out of all 20 have been supported by research. Steroids, we know they work. If you do a study where half the group gets testosterone, the other half doesn't, there will be significant improvements in muscle growth in the group that got testosterone. Caffeine works in certain situations. Blood doping, EPO, that works. Creatine, that helps to give you a little bit more energy during the first, 10 or 15 seconds of exercise. Insulin can have some ergogenic benefit. Again, I'm marking it, but you don't need to know these word for word. Now, the middle category is what we would consider inconclusive. There's some results that say it helps, some results that say it doesn't. So maybe we'll find out later that branched chain amino acids do help with muscle growth, but really there's not a comprehensive body of scientific research in the literature that shows that it works. And then on the right are things that are not supported by research. You might be surprised by whey protein. People anecdotally say it works, yet when we do a scientific method study, one group gets it, the other group gets a placebo, they're on the same workout, same diet, there does not seem to be a significant difference. Does that mean that we will never ever find out that whey protein works? No. Maybe we haven't just figured out the right chemical composition or the right way to take it. My point is, we have to use science to really get the answers. And the way that we understand if something really works or not, or how we figure out something, is through the scientific method. All right, how exciting. Okay, what is the scientific method? It's a series of steps used to investigate something. Sometimes, as you can see on this screen, I'll put things in red already. That means that they're important. So the scientific method, and I'll go ahead to the next slide, Actually, I'm going to ask you to know the four basic steps. But scientific method is a systematic way of studying something. I mean, if I wanted to put it in my own words, I might say that. Let me get my pen here. Systematic way of studying something. If you have a question, what is the function of protein in the body? If you have a question, does whey protein increase ability to lift weights? In order to make sure that we are studying it properly, we have a systematic series of steps. We do this, then we do this, then we do this. That means that we are doing it in a way that is really scientific. It's not just bro science, okay? Some of the things that are really important in this systematic series of steps is that it's objective. We have things that are measurable, not just saying, well, do you feel better? We actually want something measurable. And the key also is that these steps are reproducible. If you set up a properly set up scientific method study, someone else could do the same study and get the same results. Cool. So I've broken it into 4 steps. Observation. So you observe something. I observe that when I go to the gym, people that tell me they take whey protein, they get stronger. That's an observation. But that observation alone doesn't mean that it really works. Maybe they're getting stronger because they're working harder. Who knows? So then from your observation, you draft a hypothesis or a research question. Then you run the experiment with appropriate methodology, with appropriate data analysis. And then based off of your results, you come to a reasonable conclusion based off of what you got. Let's go through it. So you're going to make an observation. That's how we found out a lot of things in the world, you know? A lot of these things come from some kind of observation. And then from that observation, we have to create a hypothesis. A hypothesis is a statement. It is not a question. If I had a question, does whey protein help to build muscle? It is not falsifiable. When I'm finished with that, I can't go back to my original hypothesis. Does whey protein help to build muscle? I can't say yes or no definitively. So that's why we make a statement. So an example hypothesis would be ingestion of 10 milligrams. You're going to be really specific. Whey protein daily will improve bicep strength in weightlifters. So you can see I'm being very specific. It's a statement. Will improve bicep strength. So when I run the study and I get my results, it's falsifiable. Either I go back and I say, yes, the strength was improved, or I can say, no, the strength wasn't improved. So that's what falsifiable means. It is a statement that is answered by either yes or no. All right. There are different types of ways to set up your experiment. Now we have a lab on this. You're going to be able to set up your own experiment. It's so exciting. There are 2 main types of scientific studies. So if I had to say there are 2 main types of scientific studies, one would be observational, where you observe. A lot of times this is done through a survey. Maybe I give surveys to 20 people at the gym, 20 weightlifters, and I have them fill it out and keep a log of how much whey protein they're bringing in, how much they're working out, what their diet is like. And then from that survey data, I try and look for some kind of correlation. So simply through observing their habits Can I find a correlation? Is it true that, and I could test their strength too. So I could give their surveys, get them back, and then test their strength. Is there some kind of correlation where those that reported bringing in more whey protein, were they stronger? Versus an experimental group. In an experimental group, there's actually some kind of intervention. In other words, you're not just observing. There's an intervention. And because of the intervention, you're going to have a control group and an experimental group. So in an experimental study about whey protein, I would give the experimental group whey protein powder, 10 milligrams daily, taking every morning at 8 a.m. And I'd give the control group a placebo powder that looks the same. And neither group knows which one is the real whey protein. I have them do some kind of exercise program, and I assess the strength at the beginning, and I assess the strength at the end. But this involved me intervening, me doing something with them. These can both be valuable. Sometimes you don't have the ability to do some kind of intervention for a large group of people, so a survey is just fine. Okay, so you should know those. Oh yes, here we see a table. It is just the beginning, ladies and gentlemen. I do like my tables. Let me switch to green. What I want to point out, here are some examples of strengths and weaknesses of the observational versus the experimental types of research. What I have in red is what I want to point out. If you're doing some kind of observational study, the only thing you're going to be able to do is find a correlation. Like I said, if I give a survey to a bunch of weightlifters, and after testing their strengths and looking at their surveys, the people that brought in more whey protein were stronger. There's a correlation. Those two things are related. That's what that means. They're related. But it doesn't mean cause and effect. Because I didn't actually intervene, because I didn't actually intervene in control for a lot of exterior factors, I don't know if one caused the other. I can only say there's a correlation. Maybe some people were stronger because they've been working out for 2 years prior versus 5 years prior, or whatever, you get my point. In an experimental study, because you're able to control the conditions, and because you're having one group get a placebo and one group get the actual, you're actually able to determine causation. All right, excellent. So you're reviewing what I'm talking about. Anything else on the screen is extra. When you are setting up your study, there are a lot of things to consider. You obviously want to have the appropriate population. So I would probably want to test whey protein on weightlifters, not on marathon runners. You want to have a big enough sample size. More is better. You want to have something that is quantifiable, which is another way of saying measurable. I want to test muscle strength. I want to put them on a machine and test the exact number of kilograms they can lift. As we said with the scientific study, the methods must be reproducible. So you got to be specific and lay it out step by step. You want to eliminate bias. And then make sure you review what single blind versus double blind means. Single blind means, and this would only be true in experimental studies, not observational, for the most part. In a single blind, the subjects don't know if they're in the control group or the experimental group. So these subjects are blind to whether they're actually getting the whey protein or the fake whey protein. In a double blind, the researchers and the subjects both don't know. And you might think that's not necessary, but we all have some bias. So if I know that this powder actually has whey protein in it, I might say it differently, like, oh, here's your sample, good luck, knowing that it has a way and it might make a difference. So it's always better to be double blind. So you have a company or somebody else prepare the powders. So neither the researchers nor the subjects, neither of them know what's the control powder versus what is the actual whey protein powder. After you run your study, you're going to analyze the data, probably using some kind of statistical test. We are not going to get into that, which you might be happy about. And then based off of your results, you come to a conclusion. Because our hypothesis was falsifiable, we can say, do our results support our hypothesis? And the answer is either yes or no. That's it. Do our results support our, did whey protein make the weightlifter stronger? Either it did or it didn't. And then you can make logical conclusions. Maybe you thought that your sample size was really low, and maybe you come to a conclusion that our results showed that there wasn't any benefit to taking whey protein, but we really didn't have a very big sample size, so more research should be done. Or maybe you looked at 1,000 people. It's a pretty high sample size, so you could say, you know what? Judging from this, it's pretty clear that whey protein doesn't improve strength. And that's what we're showing. Let me see. Yeah, okay. What I want to point out is both yes and no answers can be helpful. So sometimes people, researchers, students, anybody, it always seems sexier to get a positive result. Yes, the whey protein did work. And you might think that that's what makes a study successful. But both positive and negative can both be helpful. Okay, so don't be down in the dumps just because it didn't show to be true. That can be just as helpful. All right. Okay. A lot of times these studies are published in a journal. So make sure you know what peer review means. Any scientific journal worth of salt is peer reviewed. And that means that peers in the same discipline approve the write-up. So in a legitimate journal, like Nature or Science, or the American College of Sports Medicine journal, Medicine and Science and Sports and Exercise, before they publish anything, that submission, that study write-up, is looked at by other professionals in the field. So that way we can know that it's legitimate. All right. You can look at this. I am not going to ask you this specific. Apparently I'm still figuring out how to work this program. There we go. I am not going to ask you these, okay? So don't worry about it. Part of it is a review of what we already did. If you're interested, the fancy word epidemiological, that's a type of study. It's a scientific study. It's a type of study that looks like at a specific population. Maybe you're looking at weightlifters. Maybe you're looking at adolescent females. Maybe you're looking at elderly athletes. We talked about experimental means that you can show causality. Sometimes we do this in a lab, sometimes we do it out in the field, but again, I'm not going to ask you this. Now we're coming down the pipe here towards our last topic for this first lecture. Now that you understand how something should be tested in science, if we have a question about something, we have to use a standardized system. That's the only way for us to really determine whether it works or not. Now that you understand that, you can become the arbiter of this. So when you see some kind of claim, oh, this pill can make you lose 10 pounds a week. Oh, putting your feet in this bath mixture can remove toxins, whatever. So now you are going to be better able to determine by looking at that claim whether it's really scientific and reliable or whether it's garbage. One question to determine whether it's scientific and reliable is, of course, was it done using the scientific method? But there are other things, other clues we can look at too. So this was kind of fun for me. I've looked at all sorts of products. If you look at this product here, anabolic activator. Oh, anabolic means muscle building. World's #1 selling anabolic activator. Look in the yellow here. Test subjects increased anabolic activation by 350%. Well, first of all, what the hell is anabolic activation? I've never heard of that, and I've been in this field for 20 years. So if you see something, maybe it's legitimate, maybe it's not, but what are the ways in which we can see, are these claims valid and accurate? This one is not, I can tell you. As I said, you're going to become the arbiter. So no matter what you're going to go on to become, coach, PE teacher, physical therapist, athletic trainer, member of your local gym, people your friends turn to. Now that you have some information, you're going to be able to really evaluate it and pass along scientific information that's healthy and legitimate. So there's a lot of things you can look at, common sense. Look at this Vibratone. Vibrate your fat away in just minutes a day. That's not common sense. Do these things sell? Of course, because people want the easy way out. So you use your common sense, look at the source. Is it coming from something that is not peer-reviewed? Is it coming from a website that is full of advertisements and misspellings? Or is it coming from a website or a peer-reviewed journal that has actual scientists with credentials? Do they make logical conclusions? So sometimes, and this happens, unfortunately, this is not going to surprise you. What is it really all about? Money. So people want to make money. So they will make any claims that they want to. And even if there's a scientific study that's run, they will come to an illogical conclusion. They will avoid all of the data that showed against their product, and they'll pick the one little thing that showed maybe some support. And they will put on their website, scientifically approved. Okay. You got to be careful. Something else I want to say. A lot of these things are not FDA approved. We'll discuss this later. The Food and Drug Administration can approve drugs. So when you take Tylenol, some kind of asthma medication, whatever, those have to be FDA approved. But ergogenic aids, it is the wild, wild west. So this Vibratone advertisement, they can say whatever they want. They don't have to scientifically back it up. So if they can say whatever they want, they're going to say whatever they want to get you to buy it. When you're looking at sources of information, what tends to be more credible? A credible newspaper versus Us Weekly, not so credible. And a .org or a .edu tends to be more credible than a .com. Not always, but usually more credible. Author. An author that has credentials, PhD, MD, registered dietitian, and make sure that those credentials are pertinent. In other words, if it's something that's looking at the effect of nutrition, then a dietitian would be a credible credential. Not necessarily a PhD, because that PhD could be in English literature. I don't know. The best sources are peer-reviewed. And any journal that you really think of as worth a salt is peer-reviewed. So Journal of the American Medical Association, for example. What are things that are not? These are things that are not credible. Personal testimony. You can pay anybody to say anything. Dramatization. You can pay an actor to do something. Catchy words and pictures. They're obviously trying to get you to focus on that instead of the real scientific information. Celebrity spokesperson. Again, people want money. I mean, think about it. We're not all that immune to it. If someone offered to give me $100,000 to go on a commercial and say this product works, I would probably think about it at first, because $100,000, that's a lot of money. But for me, my better side would come through. But you can understand how some people, when given an offer of money, would still do it. The ability to sell you the great deal or it's guaranteed. Nothing is absolutely guaranteed. Guaranteed to make you lose weight. Guaranteed to make you increase muscle mass. If it is a legitimate product, they're not going to say that. If they say no side effects, that's also a red flag that it's not legitimate, because pretty much anything has a possible side effect. I've given you some examples, how I lost 54 pounds without dieting or medication in less than 6 weeks. Too good to be true. Catchy words and pictures. Do you really think that this woman in the bikini used phentermine? No, but they put her on here because, she's got big breasts and she's scantily clad. Great deals. This is what I'm talking about with putting your feet in the cleanser. Let's see. Can you believe that putting your foot in this little thing can detox? Top 10 reasons. Rejuvenates your whole body, reduces inflammation, increases energy, helps relieve pain. Way too many things to really believe it's true. Celebrity spokesperson doesn't always necessarily mean that it works. In our lab, so our first lab is a scientific method lab, and in that lab we're going to talk about the Power Balance bracelet. This actually had many celebrity spokespeople. Lamar Odom, Shaquille O'Neal. They wore it. It must work. Well, let's look at the science. So we'll talk about that more in the lab. The internet. Now, I'm of a certain age. I did not go on the internet for the first time until I was 18, probably. Didn't have a cell phone until I was 22. So the internet, relatively new. It is the wild, wild west. It is the wild frontier. You know why? Because anybody can post anything. So you have to be careful. If you're looking at a website, who's the author? Do they have credentials? Are the credentials actually related to what they're talking about? Is it recent info? What's the source of that website? Like I said, .org or .edu tend to be more credible. .com tends to be less credible. Also look at why. Probably just trying to make money, okay? All right. Last slide here of the first lecture. There are 2 questions throughout this whole course. And this is really important. Hopefully you've stuck around, okay? Throughout this whole course, whenever we think about a sports nutrition product, we're going to ask ourselves 2 questions. Number 1, is it safe? That's really the number 1 question. If I inject myself with erythropoietin, the Lance documentary was just on ESPN this summer. He injected EPO many, many times. Is it safe? Maybe yes, maybe no. But that's the first question. It has to be proven to be safe. The number 2 question is, anytime we're considering some kind of sports nutrition product, does it work? In theory, does it work? Does it make sense, the theory they're telling you? And have studies actually shown that it works? In terms of EPO, it can be safe if done properly, and it can be very effective. But there's a lot of things that are not necessarily safe. If you want to get steroids, you can just go to bodybuilding.com. You can get a blacked out package in the mail. Is that safe if it comes from some .com website? Who knows, because it's not FDA regulated. So make sure you know those 2 questions. All right, that's it for our first lecture. Many, many more to come. Great job, everyone.